Hello, hello, hello. It's your favorite nurse, Toms, and welcome back to Trauma Bond. Today, I want to talk about what happens when you grow up without anyone to protect you and when the streets start to feel normal. Because my homelessness journey didn't start when I was grown, it started way earlier. It started when I was 12 years old. Homelessness doesn't always begin with being on the street. Sometimes it begins with being a child and realizing you don't have a home that's yours. My mom was still alive, but she wasn't there. She was also homeless too, high out of her goddamn mind, sleeping behind a McDonald's somewhere, sleeping in a park somewhere. You never know where she would be. Anyways, and I wasn't there with her. I wasn't being taken care of. I wasn't being protected. It was just a difficult experience to even express, but I'm ready. Have you ever had a parent still living, but it felt like you didn't have one at all? Well, that was me. My mom, as you know in my last episode, abandoned me when I was 12. That's when it started, sleeping at people's houses, couch to couch, trying to figure out where I was going to be safe or at least, be safer than outside. And when I look back now, it disgusts me because what kind of world lets a 12-year-old child end up in survival mode like that? Have you ever been so young but already living like you were grown? That was the beginning. By the time I was 14, I wasn't just couch surfing anymore. I was fully homeless. I was surrounded by gang members. There was drugs everywhere, unsafe people, unsafe places, you name it, I was there. And what makes it even darker is it wasn't like I didn't have anybody alive. I had sisters, I had brothers, aunts, uncles. Keep in mind, my brothers and sisters were all much older than me, like I said in my last episode. I had plenty of family, but none of them cared. No one ever came, asked me where I was sleeping. It was like I disappeared and nobody even noticed. Homelessness isn't just being without a roof. It's being without safety, protection, without anyone to say, this isn't okay. So the streets, the drugs, the gangs, the danger, it just started to feel like life. I adjusted, not because it was normal, because it definitely wasn't. It definitely didn't feel normal, but because I had to make it normal or I wouldn't have survived it. I was 12, 14. I remember nights where I should have been terrified, completely terrified, but instead I was numb. And the truth is, during that time, I didn't just witness drugs around me, I started to use them too. Because when you're 14, alone, unwanted, surrounded by chaos, all these grown men, grown women doing drugs, you go sleep at someone's house, that's all they do. Sometimes just getting high felt like it was my only way to breathe. It made it feel like I was just as normal as they were and we're all normal. But in reality, we were all fucked up, on drugs, but in general, which sucks because even now, I carry that with me, that hyper awareness, the anxiety when things are quiet, because chaos was all I knew. Calm didn't feel normal. Healing didn't come with an apology. Healing came with naming it, saying things like, I deserved to be cared for. I deserved someone, and I deserved safety. And I didn't get any of those things. And it wasn't my fault that I didn't get it. I didn't ask to be born. And you know what? It was a really tough time for me. Can you imagine a little girl who can't even do her own laundry being homeless? That was me. Sometimes I even had to sleep at parks. I had to, take bird bath showers in the Jack in the Box bathroom. It was difficult for me at the time, and thinking about it now, I have no idea how I did it. The people I hung out with were 28, 29, 30, and it all started after my, living with my aunt, but that's a whole nother episode. But after that, when I met all these people and I started doing drugs, they said, come over here, come to this motel or come to my house, and it just became normal for me. I was on drugs. I was very mean. I was very angry at the world, you know. I still had a mom who was alive who didn't give a shit about me. It felt like my normal way to live, you know. I wouldn't go to parties or anything like that, but every day was a goddamn party, you know? I mean, everybody's getting high, everybody's getting drunk, you know. I put myself in dangerous situations as well. You know, I remember I had a friend, and I talked about her in the last episode with, you know, what happened with her or with me and her brother, but this is the friend I'm talking about. I ended up, you know, staying with her for a while. I remember one day I hung out with her and she said, "We're going to go hang out with my friend." So, of course, I was like, "Well, I ain't got nowhere else to go, so let's go." So I went over there and she was like, "Okay, we're all going to go to a bar, and basically all you have to do is, you know, talk with men and get them to buy the drinks and you get paid." So I was like, "Hell yeah, I ain't got no job. Like, I'm 14, like I'm ready to get paid for, you know, something so simple." So I was getting ready at this other lady's house with my friend, and my friend got sick, right? She got sick, she couldn't go. So I ended up going with this lady, and she spoke no English, none. So that was already hard for me because I obviously didn't speak Spanish. And I remember going to this little bar, and no one spoke English there, which was fine. And she was basically telling me like, "Okay, you know, go talk to that guy and get him to buy drinks, get him to buy you a drink, and at the end you'll get paid." So that's what I did. And it's crazy because I remember, you know, sitting there with this guy, you know, talking with him. And then the other lady who I was with came up, ended up dancing with him, getting him a drink. And then she comes to me and she says, "All right, well, we're going to go home with him, and he's, you know, going to pay us for sex, 300 bucks." And I said, "Absolutely not. Take me the fuck home." And she was like, "No, you're going to come." So I was like, "No, I'm getting the fuck out of here." So I made it a big deal. And of course, because I'm 14, like, what's going on? Where am I even? What bar is this? Obviously, they were doing other business there. So I told this lady, I said, "No, take me the hell back to your house so I can get my stuff and leave." So I go back, I tell my friend, she, I guarantee she knew what was going on. That's why she got sick, right? And, you know, we went back to her house, and it was like nothing even happened. You know, everything that I did in these times was so normal. Um, and that's just one thing. Like, I remember being in shootouts and just walking down the street, or being in fights, just walking down the street. It was complete chaos. You know, I wasn't scared in the moment, of course, because it was so normal to me. I grew up with these people coming in and out of my aunt's house, you know, seeing them as I got to be a, you know, a more aged little girl. Not that I grew up with them like since I was 6 or anything, but, you know, just seeing them, you know, after a while, I started to pick up the same habits. You know, I was always drunk, I was always high. You know, I would meet different people, meet different men, and it just became normal. And it's not normal to feel that way. And it wasn't normal for me to be homeless. I shouldn't have been in these positions. And, you know, I definitely felt unwanted, uncared for, unsafe. You know, I was always unhappy, always angry. And I think what hurts the most is realizing how young I was. 12 years old, 12, 14. You know, at the start of these things happening, learning what abandonment felt like, learning what survival felt like. I had to always put myself in bad situations to get something for myself. And for a long time, it was life, you know, up until I was 18 years old. I thought chaos was normal. I thought being unwanted was normal. You know, all the people I hung out with didn't have anybody, or if they did, they were still unwanted. I thought, you know, danger was something you just learned to live with. It was just normal for me. The area I lived in was full of gangs. I talked to a few of them, obviously for my safety, like even when I was in school before my stupid, what was it, counselor, called CPS. When I was in school, I couldn't walk home by myself because of where I lived. So, I had friends from MS who had to walk me home, but they couldn't go all the way because on the street that I lived on was another gang, but it was unsafe for me to walk because then at that time, everybody knew me. Everybody knew who I was, who I talked to, who I hung out with. Not that I told them, but they would see me. They would see me on the streets. I'd always be doing something. It was just normal. And when nobody comes, when family doesn't care, when your own mother, is alive but lost somewhere in her own addiction, her own mental illness, you you stop expecting rescue, You stop expecting safety and you just keep going. But the truth that I'm learning now, just because I made it through it doesn't mean I should have had to. I deserved a childhood. I deserved protection. I deserved someone to notice I was gone, that I was, oh, I wonder how my niece is doing. I deserved those things. And if you're listening to this and it, hits home, you feel it, I need you to understand that you're not weak for adapting, you're not broken for surviving, and you're not wrong for still carrying it. The healing starts when we stop pretending it was normal and we finally call it what it was, trauma, right? For so long, I told myself, oh, that's just how I grew up. It made me such a strong woman. Did it though? I kind of, it kind of feels like it made me a super aware woman, a super, person with anxiety. Everybody's bad. Everybody has a negative outlook. Like I judge everybody right away. My whole demeanor is different from how I grew up. Like even now, all my coworkers think that I'm super mean, that I'm super tough, which I still don't understand because I didn't grow up with, oh hi, Dominique, how's your morning going? How's everything? How are you, sweetie? I didn't grow up with none of that. So when I see my coworkers or people, I say good morning, you know, and then if there's like an issue with our work or something, I say, hey, just so you know, this needs to be this way. And I'm mean, but I'm like the nicest person I know. I've been through so much trauma. I just want to help everybody who even has one problem. And that's a problem also, but another topic for another day. Yeah, if you related to this, I hope any of this helped you know that you're not alone, right? I'm still I'm not going through it. I've definitely healed, but I still remember it and it still brings me some type of sadness knowing that my son is 12 almost and he's just at the age where I was abandoned and he can't even do his homework on time. He could barely do his own laundry, so it's tough for me. Well, this is Trauma Bond, and sometimes the bravest thing we can do is tell the truth about what we lived through and still choose to keep living. So, this was Trauma Bond, and I hope you related or connected or even felt safer in your current positions that you're in, knowing that you're not alone. I will be posting another episode Sunday at 9 p.m., and it will be about my time with my aunt, which was definitely too long for this episode. So I hope you guys tune in. This was Trauma Bond with Nurse Doms. Bye.